Time Capsule. To be opened, September 2025, Henderson High School. Buried September 1990 inside a letter. Handwritten. From David Chen, 30 years old, new English teacher. To whoever opens this. By now, I've told the same story 140 times. Students probably hate me, think I'm senile, obsessed, or broken. They're not entirely wrong, but I made a promise. And I'll keep telling this story until I retire. When you read this, it'll be September 2025, my last year. If I've kept my promise, today I'll tell the story for the final time. But this time, I'll tell the ending. The part I couldn't say before, the reason I've repeated it for 35 years. Watch the faces. Watch them realize that the boring, repetitive story they mocked, it was never boring. They just didn't know they were part of it. David Chen, 1990. When Principal Morrison opened the time capsule in front of the whole school, students laughed. Oh my God, he planned to torture us for 35 years? But their laughter died when Mr. Chen stepped forward, took the letter, and said, "You want to know why I told that story 140 times? Open your yearbooks." 1990. Look at the freshman class photo. Find the boy in the back who isn't smiling. That silent boy in my story, I've been telling you his name for 35 years. You just didn't know it. If David's 35-year secret moves you, take a moment to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people discover these hidden story journeys. Now, back to 35 years ago, to a young teacher's first day. September 1990, Henderson High School in Portland, Oregon. David Chen was 30 years old, black hair neatly combed, wearing a suit, the kind new teachers wore, too formal. His first day, his first class. Room 14, English 9, freshman. 28 students sat at desks, distracted, curious, 14 to 15 years old. With that strange middle-to-high school energy, David looked at them, held his breath. "Good morning," he said quietly. "I'm Mr. Chen, your English teacher. And today, I want to tell you a story." Students listened with interest. First days were always strange. Teachers introduced themselves, explained rules, set expectations. But a story, unusual. David walked to the board, turned to the students, and began speaking. There was once a boy who couldn't speak. Medically, he could speak. Vocal cords worked, tongue moved, brain was healthy. But he didn't speak. Ever. He was silent. The class quieted. David's voice was soft but filled with pain. His mother brought him to school anyway. "He'll never learn," they said. "He'll be a burden to other children," they said. "Send him to special education," they said. But one teacher didn't listen. David paused, his eyes distant, looking into memory. That teacher sat beside the boy every day. Quietly. Without forcing anything. Just present. Days passed. Weeks. Months. The boy still didn't speak. But the teacher didn't give up. Students were captivated. Where was this going? Then one day, 7 months later, the boy said a single sentence. Just 4 words. But those 4 words changed everything. David looked at the students, eyes moist. The boy said, "Thank you for being patient." Silence. Then a student, a girl named Jennifer, raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, what happened to that boy?" David smiled, small, sad. He learned, he grew, and he never forgot that patient teacher. Students nodded. Nice story. Inspiring. About patience and understanding. Beautiful. And they thought David Chen would never tell that story again. They were wrong. September 1991. David's second year. First day. Same class, room 14. Good morning. I'm Mr. Chen. And today, I want to tell you a story. There was once a boy who couldn't speak. Students listened. A new story? No. Same story from last year. Word for word. But maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe first day ritual. September 1992, third year. There was once a boy who couldn't speak. Again. Exactly the same. Students looked at each other. Weird. September 1993, 1994, 1995. Every year. Same story. Never changing. By 2000, 10 years had passed. And everyone at Henderson High knew. Mr. Chen tells the same story on the first day. Always. No exceptions. Students began questioning. Mr. Chen, why do you tell the same story every year? David just smiled. Because some stories are worth telling. But the same story. Word for word. For 10 years. Yes. Why? You'll understand someday. But nobody understood. And slowly, the story became legend. Henderson High's strangest tradition. Mr. Chen's repeated story. By 2005, 15 years later, the story was a joke. Upperclassmen mimicked Mr. Chen's story. There was once a boy who couldn't speak. With exaggerated voices, with laughter. By 2010, students memorized the story. Word for word. While Mr. Chen told it, they silently lip-synced along. His mother brought him to school anyway. Students. His mother brought him to school anyway. He'll never learn, they said. Students. He'll never learn, they said. It had become a game. How well can you memorize it? By 2015, social media exploded. Students shared videos. Mr. Chen's boring story. 25th year special. The man who told the same story for 25 years comments. Is he senile? Obsessed? Someone helped this man write a new story. But David Chen changed nothing. Same words, same pauses, same sad smile at the end, and nobody, not one person, knew why. September 2025. David Chen's final year. 65 years old, hair completely gray, but still the same quiet demeanor. Retirement announcement had been made 6 months prior. Students were excited, but for a different reason. Because this year was Henderson High's 50th anniversary. And traditionally, on the 50th anniversary, the time capsule buried in 1990 would be opened. September 5th, 2025. Friday. The entire school, 200 students, 80 staff, gathered in the gymnasium. On stage, a metal box, 50 years old, rusted, but still sealed. Principal Morrison, a woman in her 50s, principal for 10 years, approached the microphone. Today is a special day. 50 years ago, Henderson High School was founded, and the founders buried a time capsule to be opened 35 years later. Today, in 2025, we open that capsule. The crowd applauded. Curiosity. Excitement. Morrison opened the box. Inside, photos of the old school, a newspaper from 1990, several teacher letters, and an envelope. Name written, David Chen, open in 2025. The crowd went silent. Mr. Chen? The weird story teacher? Morrison held the envelope. Mr. Chen, would you come to the stage? David slowly stood, walked from the back of the gymnasium to the stage. Each step heavy, each movement measured. He took the envelope, opened it, read the letter, silently, just for himself, then looked up. Tears in his eyes. This letter, he said quietly, I wrote in 1990. My first year. My first day, and I made a promise. He scanned the school. 200 faces, waiting with curiosity. In this letter, David continued, I promised to tell the same story every year. For 35 years, until I retired. And today, in my final year, I promised to tell you the ending. The crowd had mixed reactions, some excited, some skeptical, some mocking. For 35 years, David said, you've asked me why. See, why the same story? Why never change it? And I never answered. Because it wasn't time. He paused, breathed. But now it's time. Now I can tell you the truth. David pulled a photo from his pocket. Old, faded, from 1990. 1990. Henderson High freshman class photo. 28 students, all smiling, all. Except one. He projected the photo on screen. The crowd saw rows of young faces, 14 to 15 years old, smiling. But in the back, in the corner, one boy wasn't smiling. Asian boy, serious face, as if avoiding the camera. "Do you see that boy?" David asked. The boy in the back? His name was Tommy Chen. Silence. Tommy Chen was my brother, my younger brother. He was 14 years old, and he didn't speak. The crowd froze. Medically, he could speak. Vocal cords worked. Brain was healthy. But he didn't speak. Ever. It's called selective mutism, a condition following trauma. And Tommy's trauma was our father. David's voice broke. Our father, when Tommy was 8, beat him for his silence. "Real men speak," he said. "Real men are strong." Tommy wasn't silent. He was just introverted, shy, and our father couldn't accept that. Tears streamed down David's face. Our father beat him so much that Tommy shut down completely, as a protective mechanism. If I don't speak, he can't attack. If I stay silent, I become invisible. The gymnasium was filled with crying people. In 1990, David continued, I was 30, new teacher, and Tommy came to Henderson High, freshman, my school. But different classes, I never taught him. But I watched, from afar, how he struggled, how he was alone, how nobody tried to talk to him. He stopped, breathing hard. And then, in November 1990, 2 months after school started, Tommy killed himself. The crowd gasped. Collective shock. He left a note. Just one sentence. Nobody is listening. David was now crying freely. And that day I made myself a promise. I would tell a story about Tommy. Every year. Every first day. Until someone listened. Until someone asked. Until someone cared. Silence. Only sobs. The silent boy in my story? That was Tommy. The patient teacher? That was the teacher I wanted to be. But never was. Because I watched from afar. Did nothing. And he died. David looked at the screen, at Tommy's photo. For 35 years, he said, I told that story. Because I couldn't tell Tommy's story. Because it was too late. Too late to help. But maybe, if I told it enough times, someone would notice another Tommy. Someone would notice a silent child. Someone would help. David scanned the crowd. You thought I was boring, obsessed, repetitive. And you were right. But this story was Tommy's only marker. And it was the only way to keep him alive. Standing ovation. But with crying people, shock, sadness, understanding. But David wasn't finished. Because he had one more thing to say. After Tommy died, David continued, voice steadier now. I went through his things, found his journal, and in it he'd written something every single day for 2 years. The same sentence, every day. Today, nobody asked if I was okay. The gymnasium went silent again. 730 entries. 2 years. Today, nobody asked if I was okay. And I was his brother. I lived in the same house, taught at the same school, and I never asked. David's voice cracked again. So I made a rule for myself. Every year, first day of class, I would tell Tommy's story. Not explicitly. I couldn't. It was too painful. But disguised. As a lesson about patience. About seeing silent students. About asking. He looked at the crowd. And for 35 years, thousands of you heard that story. And thousands of you rolled your eyes, called it boring, mocked it. But here's what you didn't know. Every year, after I told that story, I waited. Waited to see if any student would come to me. Any silent student. Any struggling student. Any student who needed someone to ask, pause. And they did. Not every year, but over 35 years? 47 students, 47 silent kids who came to my office after hearing that story. 47 kids who said, "Mr. Chen, I'm like that boy in your story." And I helped them, got them counseling, got them support, made sure they knew someone was listening. The crowd erupted again, but now with understanding, not just sadness. "So when you mocked my repetitive story," David said, "you didn't know. You didn't know it saved 47 lives. You didn't know it was the only way I could honor Tommy. You didn't know that boring, repetitive story was my way of asking every single student, 'Are you okay?'" He wiped his eyes. "Today is my last first day, and I'm telling you the ending, because maybe, some of you will become teachers, and maybe you'll remember. The silent students need you most. The students who don't raise hands, who don't speak up, who sit in the back and don't smile in photos. Those students need someone to ask, someone to notice, someone to care." David pulled out Tommy's journal, held it up. "This is Tommy's journal. 730 entries. I've kept it for 35 years, and today I'm donating it to Henderson High's library, so every student can read it, can understand, can learn what silence really means." Standing ovation lasted 15 minutes. After the ceremony, the gymnasium emptied. But one student remained, a girl, 17, with long black hair. She approached David, tears streaming. "Mr. Chen," she said quietly, "my name is Emma, and I'm the silent child, at home. My mom and stepdad, her voice broke. David hugged her. "I know, and you're not alone anymore." That day, David took Emma to the school counselor. They filed reports. Protection services got involved, and Emma was placed in a safe home. 1 week later, another student came, then another, then 5 more. Silent children, children who couldn't speak, children who'd now heard David's story and understood. Someone is listening. Over the next month, 23 students came forward. 23 students who'd been suffering in silence. 23 students who'd heard the same story, mocked for years, but finally understood it was an invitation. The local news picked up the story. Teacher's 35-year repetition saves lives. National news followed. The most important boring story ever told. And David Chen, the Yaidifa teacher students had mocked for decades, became known as the teacher who turned grief into purpose. But the most important moment came 3 weeks later. A man walked into Henderson High, late 40s, professional attire, nervous demeanor. He asked for Mr. Chen. When David met him in the office, the man said, "Mr. Chen, my name is Robert Martinez. I graduated from Henderson in 1995. And I need to tell you something." David waited. "When I was a freshman," Robert continued, "I heard your story, the silent boy. And I was silent too. Not literally, but emotionally. My father was abusive, and I was shutting down, planning to end it." His voice broke. "But after your story, I came to your office. Do you remember? October 1995? David thought back. 30 years. So many students. But then, yes, a quiet boy. Hispanic. Scared. Robert. Yes, I remember. You saved my life," Robert said, crying now. "You got me help. Got me into therapy. Got social services involved. And because of you, I survived. Went to college. Became a social worker. And now I save kids like me." He held David's hands. "I came back to say thank you. And to tell you, that boring, repetitive story you told, it was never boring. It was a lifeline. And I grabbed it." David hugged him. And for the first time in 35 years, felt that maybe, Tommy's death hadn't been meaningless. David Chen retired in June 2026, but his story didn't end Henderson. High created the Tommy Chen Silent Student Support Program, dedicated counselors for students struggling with selective mutism, trauma, or abuse. The program spread. 10 schools adopted it, then 50, then nationwide. And every year, on the first day of class, teachers across America tell a story. Different stories, their own stories, but always with the same purpose: to let silent students know someone is listening. David's final act before retiring was to visit Tommy's grave. First time in 35 years, he knelt before the headstone. "Tommy, I kept my promise. Told your story 140 times, and it saved 70 lives. 47 while I was teaching. 23 after the truth came out. Not enough to bring you back, but enough to honor you." He placed Tommy's journal on the grave. "You wrote, 'Nobody is listening,' for 730 days. I made sure that for 12,775 days after, somebody was listening. I made sure your silence had a voice." David stood, tears streaming. "Rest now, little brother. Your story is told, and it will keep being told forever. Sometimes the most boring story is the most important story. Sometimes repetition isn't senility, it's purpose. Sometimes what looks like obsession is actually devotion. And sometimes the silent students just need one person to ask, 'Are you okay?' David Chen asked that question 200 times over 35 years, disguised as a boring, repetitive story, and 70 people answered. 70 lives saved because one teacher refused to forget his silent brother.